Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to Daggers Inheritors. This is my full reaction and full analysis of that, which means this video is probably going to be extremely long. Because it was going to be extremely long, I actually did have a point where I was like, should I even do a video on this one? Even though people really wanted me to, it just felt like it would be a huge video and a huge undertaking, and I'm sure it's going to be. But despite me thinking I might just skip it, Patreon Bylov in the executive producer group decided to boost his support and put himself up into composer, which is the tier that I basically have to do certain types of content, and I can't complain about it. I can't argue within reason. He basically forces me to do whatever he wants. Here we are. He's done that. You're all welcome on behalf of Bylov that I have to do this video. And I do also want to say that, as many of you know, I'm not super invested in the Arcanite story. I do know bits and pieces of it, but I don't play the game and I'm not huge into the story. I just want to say that because I don't want anyone thinking I'm going to be reacting to this as a fan or as somebody who's familiar with a lot of the backstory and lore. I only have a very spotty knowledge of it, so don't expect this to be a very reactive reaction. I'm going to be focusing on the animation, the qualities, and the techniques used as always in these videos, and not so much the story or getting invested there. If I happen to, cool, but don't expect that going into it, alright? So without further ado, let's go! Loving the visual aesthetic already. It has a lot of the qualities that I've liked about other Arknights projects. You can definitely see that they have a little bit more focus on locking the visual aesthetic in. There's a little bit more compositing happening here. I gotta figure that's because they knew exactly what they were doing with this project, making it so long, a giant story piece. Probably put a lot of effort and got their A-team on the game here. I like the eyes on that one. Good little jitter on the iris. Alright, sorry if you noticed the cut there. I realized I was watching one without English subtitles, so I changed that. Solid fight choreography as always. Ooh! So that was just a really good punch. It sold that impact really well. I love this blend of like these painterly backgrounds. It's great color matching. This is what I meant by the compositing being so dang solid. Like, this is beautiful. I admit I'm a little curious about what the juxtapositions going on here is. Might get some answers though. Maybe not. Don't know if that's one of those things where we're expected to know lore. I do know about Amiya and the other character and like their relationship, but I don't know how W fits into all of that, so that might be something I have to figure out during this video. Whew. Sorry, that walk cycle. Wow. I might have to take notes. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to remember all these beautiful little highlights. That's interesting to leave just a still shot there. Time saving? Couldn't afford it. Yikes. I'm really liking this, this like synth orchestral music under here too. Whew! That was a beautiful explosion, jeez. That was very well placed into that shot. It almost didn't look like it was moving for a second there. I might have to look closer at that one later. I love those match shots. Just looks really cool. Whoa. Struggle in the hand. Ooh. That was very smooth. It's another one of those explosions that just works really well. They really composited those explosions beautifully.
あのガキ一体誰なの？ずいぶん過保護ね。
俺の娘だ。あの子は関係ない。
Alright, Spider-Woman, Jesus. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to focus a lot on this sequence, aren't I? There's a lot of detail. They put a lot of detail into these fights. They really do. There's so many little things that they're paying attention to. A lot of physics that are being actually listened to and focused on, and I always appreciate that in CG stuff, because it can be so hard to find that balance. Oh! Man, they're really going nuts on the shot composition. Composition? Composition. Whew. If I could speak English. Kind of love the attitude of really nonchalant, just like, I'm just doing this. Long live the king, motherfucker. It's weird hearing an alternate version of this song. Dude, this sequence is just full of little things. I'm definitely gonna be... Suzume, sorry. I have the Makoto Shinkai sickness. I see a door standing in the middle of nowhere and I'm like, ooh! Dude, the lighting on that sequence. Whew. All right, got an answer for their relationship a little bit there. Ooh, ooh, man. That was just eye candy. Between the impact frames and the following, like, giant formation, that was so sick, dude. I'll have to look at that closer as well. Make sure that there's nothing in the credit sequence that I'm going to be missing. Watched enough things in my life to not be positive that it's done until it's done. See? Knew it. A younger me would have skipped all this and never known it existed. Whew. Love the new outfit. That must have been a part of like a character change moment. I know they have like class changes and such where they like evolve, quote unquote. So, dude, that was awesome. All right, I do have things I want to talk about. So the first one I want to talk about, just this like blood coming off this knife here. I mean, like, obviously it's right there. I don't need to circle it, but now it's been done. Point being, this is like a 2D asset put onto a 3D one. You can see it definitely like kind of dancing around and like trying to drain off naturally, but that's very, very difficult to track to a CG moving object. But they probably took this shot, brought it into whatever program, either a 2D program, could have just been something as simple as Blender. And the reason I think it might be put into the CG program directly, like a Blender scenario with their grease pencil, might just be the fact that this lighting, really, it's like you can see it reacting to both of the layers, both the knife and the liquid here. So I think it might have just been put together and then comped together. It could have been done in a post process as well. Like I said, just exporting the raw shot of the knife, having somebody draw over it in a different program, and basically just taking those separate shots and putting them together to comp them together in a different program. But it's hard to tell. There's so many ways to do things. There's so many ways to achieve certain things in animation that it's really difficult just to pick one. But I actually like that because it makes the blood on here kind of look like it's not just blood. It makes it look organic in a way that it almost is living in of itself. It has character to it. It moves around kind of on its own. It just kind of, oscillates and then drips down. And that's probably just because they're trying to make it look like it's draining off of the knife, but it almost makes it look alive, like it's its own character, like a Venom situation in a way. So I think that looks pretty cool. So into the first action shot I wanted to talk about. I really love this. I love that they're showcasing where they are inside this plume of dust and smoke by just simply having the clashes that impact the little flares coming off of the knives that they're fighting each other with, and you can follow them through, and then they emerge out of the other side. It's just great visual storytelling, showcasing where characters are before revealing who's fighting is a really neat one, and it's something that can be difficult to nail down. I've seen this done before in other projects, but I always love to see it, just because I personally think it's creative. Like, it hasn't been overdone, and it's one of those things where you have to have the right scenario and the right type of characters for that to make sense. So utilizing this type of technique is just really fun, and then of course you get all the payoff of having the characters fighting revealed. You get to see who's fighting and why, and then it answers all those questions. It's a good way to keep that anticipation just kind of riding that thin razor's edge right before it gets to the payoff of the whole Schrodinger's fight situation. And of course, I mentioned this impact during the watch, but I love how punchy this is. The main reason this feels so punchy is because of the way that they handled this impact with the leg here. She just kind of hits her, you see it still on the face, and then it's just way over there. So you get this nice separation of having her all the way over here to all the way over here in just a fraction of a frame. It's literally a frame difference, and that is an insane speed boost. So you can tell that once the foot was done gripping on the other character's cheek and it let loose, how much potential energy was locked into that and forced into her jaw, basically. That's a pain. I also love how the time ramps down just to kind of sell that extra, like this might have been the final hit, and then it changes that by having her react and go in for this final blow here. I just want to see this frame by frame to watch it happen. The flip and the absolute speed into the eye. You think it's over, it's not. You know, it's just such good payoff. It, again, takes you out of that razor's edge by putting you back on it. And then it's like, well, what happened? Who won? And it's like, while we may know because we know the characters and who the main character is in this case, it's still a matter of, did they win? You know, there's just, you never know. That's why I call it Schrodinger's fight. It's really fun. And right here, not too much on the animation side, but illustration, like I mentioned, these backgrounds. This happens a lot in this project where they have beautiful contrast and shot composition here. I've talked about the rule of thirds plenty of times. You see how that fits on there and how she's in the bottom corner of where that one would be. Like, obviously, if I drew them a little bit better, you'd be able to see it better, but she's right there. She's like right at the corner of what would be that third, and that's a really, really nice just pocket to nestle her into visually. And of course, training your eye to follow it by keeping that curve there and having something of a similar contrast there, you have nowhere else to really look. If you were to break this down just to what is the core visual chunk of this, just this like square right here, it's again right in that same scale. It's just, you know, shrunk down a little bit. That composition placement of her being just right there is just really, really, really clean. And then you have the beautiful, beautiful painterly effect here on the edge. I'm not sure if this was done in CG or if they painted these in and then just threw them in and comped it all together. It's hard to tell, again, like earlier, but I love this, how it has this kind of painty fuzz. I love that look. It feels so like watercolor. It's just, it's so nice to see these like actual bands of individual colors in each little chunk of this as it goes from that darker to that brighter. And that is really what leads your eye to the center of this shot. So contrast is huge when it comes to anything in cinematography, filmography, anything, any visual medium. Having contrast guide the eyes of the viewer is insanely important. It's one of those things where everybody should learn it. If you don't, and if you have, you're probably doing pretty well for yourself right now. It is one of the key things to learn while getting into the visual medium in any way, shape, or form. All right, so here I'm going through this shot slow-mo so you can see this walk cycle I'm going to be talking about here. I love the weight she has on this one. She's got all of that weight on her, and even down to the legs reacting to the impact on the ground. This is an amazing shot. I love the way this one looks. It's going to take me a few seconds to get through this just because of how long it takes, but it's got so much weight. This one must have been a shot where somebody took reference of themselves walking, because this is too perfect to have just been somebody eyeballing it. You see exactly where she like flicks her cape back, like the feet are landing so intensely. As they land, you get to see that shock, especially right there on this leg right here. And in full motion, you get to see those little quivers a little bit better. But all in all, this is an amazing, amazing weight. And I feel like out of all the shots in this project, this is the only one that really felt like a real physic kind of thing. Like, this is how you would expect it to actually be in real footage, wearing all this heavy baggy clothing and all that weight just bearing down step after step, and the way she has to kind of change her gait in order to adjust for all that extra weight on her pants especially, and that cloak being in the way. It's just so much. I'll play it through one more time at this slow down speed so you can kind of see what's happening with the weight in the legs again as the impact lands, just so you can really appreciate that extra, just like that little bit of detail of having that like extra weight shift in the loose pant leg just really sells the physics on this one. I loved that. It's so much attention to detail there. It also flows right into this, which I was mentioning earlier, how I'm kind of intrigued that out of this entire project, this is the one where they just basically used what could have been production art. This could have been just like a piece that somebody put out there to be like, here's what we want the facility to look like, and used it as reference for the project, for the animators and the actual illustrators making everything else. And they just kind of left this here. She's not moving, she's not doing anything, there's no like other sequential movement happening on this shot. It's just a still shot. and like there's not even any parallax happening with the background assets or anything. Like they could have honestly separated this out, even if it was in post. That whole chunk in the front for that foreground, they could have just taken that and pulled it out, pulled a little bit of a parallax to it to make it seem like there's movement in the shot itself. That's really the only spot you would have to do that to force that opinion in the mind. Everything else would probably be okay leaving it alone, even if she was still. Your brain might not even realize that she's not walking if you had a little bit of that parallax separation in the front. So again, not sure why they did it. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it works all the same, and it kind of adds an accent to the center of this project, but it's also like, I wonder why. You know, it's sometimes you just are left with questions and you don't know if you'll ever get the answer, and that's fine. And I didn't really talk about it too much, but I did like how this was done. It is sped up for the record. How they kind of like were putting together the pieces as she walked down this hallway. That's just really good visual storytelling. I love the way that that was set up and showing the result of it after the fact, and you get to see what the actual impact of those actions were. It's just beautiful. It's very well done, very tasteful concept there to be able to show the before and after of what was happening while it's happening and while it's being discovered. All right, here's the spot. They say cool guys don't look at explosions, but I'm a nerd, so here we go. This is really nice. I didn't even notice this impact frame when I was first watching it. It happened so quick. This was such a tasty, snappy little explosion. It had so much detail in it for just being boom, in and out, done. Like the growth here, the immediate expansion outward, all that payoff, all that rubble, all the detail, every little single individual piece of this facility just flying out at absolute max velocity, and all this beautiful smoke and fire plumage happening here. This is a very like gas fire kind of explosion, which makes me feel like this was done by somebody who doesn't pay attention to explosions. And honestly, it's not a big deal. I want to make that clear. Like, Hollywood explosions are never how they actually look in real life. That's fine. Putting it through that, like, the tinted glasses of this is an action sequence, you can forgive that it's not super accurate. At the end of the day, if it looks good, that's the point, and that's what I always say when I do these videos. I also loved this, how they handled her just getting absolutely fucking shot out there. She eats absolute shit going into this, and that's just, it's really well done. You get to see the full payoff of what that explosion caused her to go through, and then of course the reaction afterwards. That would discombobulate you quite a bit. I have no reason to believe this isn't the exact expression I would make after facing that sort of an explosion if I didn't die. I wanted to go through this just to see the reveal here a little bit slower and see exactly what it fades into. I don't know which is the before and the after, for the record. I feel like the shot of them in the forest is the before, and the shot of this is the after, and they're just kind of doing a flashback thing more than they are a flash forward thing. But I honestly could see it happening either way. Again, I don't really know enough about the lore to know which of these would happen first chronologically. And I honestly really like how they managed to match these shots up in line. Like, there's a rough outline of where the hallway was going to where they're standing now. It's like you just see that same direction happening, and there's some like logic to that in the visual storytelling side of this. The direction of having those two line up makes sense. But I really like that it doesn't like perfectly line up either. To me, that makes it feel a little bit more real, because when things perfectly line up, while a match shot is fantastic and there are spots where it works great, like going from a character dead center of frame and then like smash cutting to them still dead center of frame but in a different location, that sort of thing works better for me than stuff like this showing that time changes. When things are just a little bit in a different spot, makes it feel like time has actually moved on since the first shot intended chronologically. There's a lot of stuff happening in this sequence, but I just want to focus on this one here. I loved this aggression, the dig of the chalk into the side of the rock, and you get to see her hand trembling with that force, just building up that potential energy to let it go when she finally goes. I like that there's just so much to be said here about the characters' relationships throughout this entire section. It's so damn good, but I just want to focus on small things here. And I love that right here, she like digs into it. The camera does a shake to add to that aggression. You got just that extra punch in the impact here, showing that she's really pissed, even though she can't really like put it in any farther. You can see that thanks to that camera shake, that she's trying literally so hard she made the world shake, is kind of what that's insinuating. So there's cool little things like that that you can do with direction and cinematography just to point those extra emotions forward and really sell further than what the character is able to show you physically. How is the world around her reacting? And the camera shaking is a great way to add some extra intensity. On top of course, her following through with just this long scrape. Just the anger has to go somewhere. You can't build up all that potential energy without releasing it. And the kinetic release of her just going, hurrah, and just letting it drop, you know? Get it out of your system, move on. That's the type of person that she seems to be, so it works really well. And it's a very intense sequence. You can even see her starting to bleed here due to the dragging she did across that rock. She probably like nicked her knuckle on there. It's so good. I love those. That extra detail of the blood dripping made the entire sequence go from wow, she's pissed to oh, she's pissed. It's just, it really sells it that much more. Again, when you have those little extra ways you can take it, like having the camera shake earlier when she couldn't put her force forward anymore, the camera did it for her. When she couldn't put enough force into the chalk to just get it out of her system, it shows you that she went literally so hard that she broke her own skin, which is a whole other layer of her anger. And that's just so poetic. Okay, for this sequence that I reacted to positively earlier, not as much happened as I thought might have been when I was initially watching it. It's just kind of a camera ramp that goes straight through here, and I felt like there was more layers happening between here that I wanted to get into. But at the end of the day, I think that was just really good camera ramping. I think while this is definitely a different shot than the one we just saw at the beginning, and they're stitching those together and blurring that reality with some of these other cloud layers, I don't think it's quite as deep as I initially thought, but this camera ramp was so smooth through those layers that it kind of just made it look more impactful. And that's also something to point out. Those simple answers that you think might be overly complex or have some deeper potential to them, like there could have been more happening in between, and there really wasn't. It was just like effectively that one shot, a separate composition, probably of just some volumetric cloud work, just to pop it in there, some smoke sims, make them fluffy, and then do another shot of them coming into this shot, maybe pulled out of another thin layer of mist or smoke sim. So it's just, the little things here, but I love how smooth it ramps up. It really does that like ease into and out of really smooth and nice. I can't say smooth enough. The timing of a camera ramp is incredibly important. Like you can either make it way too fast or way too slow, and that can affect how the viewer sees it. But this one was so smooth that it literally tricked my mind into thinking that there might be more happening in that transition than there ever was. And that's definitely saying something. And right after that sequence, they do something that I like to call the Cloverfield punch, which I'm not sure what this is actually called, if there is a proper term for it, but I call it the Cloverfield punch because this happens quite a few times in that movie. But basically, as a character is revealed, or as something on screen is revealed, the camera itself zooms in. There's a little bit of a camera shake to it, just enough to make it feel like there might be somebody watching from the top down, and we're able to put ourselves into that seat and be like, oh, that's a character we need to pay attention to. And that punch in, keeping them dead center on frame, makes it focus in just like we are. So it's kind of an extension of the viewer's perspective here. It's one of the few times where you can give an outside perspective where it feels like you're connecting outside of just it being like an establishing shot, where it's like, of course they have to show you where they are. This takes it a step further and shows you who it is, and maybe the why even. I also want to point out here that they actually saved a little bit of time by being cheeky between this shot and this shot. At some point, that dude let go of this little girl, We don't get to see it. There was no impact focus on her at all. You don't get to see her flying through the air at all. They saved some time. That could have taken a lot more time, putting the whole shot together, having the physics have to be in place to show the character falling and rolling on the ground. It's a whole to-do. So like having these little sequences where they just don't do that, they just do not connect, but they utilize the explosion from the prior shot to be like, no shit, something happened. And then they just show the outcome. This can be overdone and sometimes can be way too jarring to actually pay off. But with this one, you can already assume that because you saw the character running with the girl in front, that he's trying to protect said character. So, of course he would get rid of her when an explosion hits. He's clearly not an idiot. So like you can put all that together in your mind in a fraction of a second, but your mind being able to do that just kind of clarifies that you can do this sort of thing, this jarring transition, without it being too impactful to the actual experience, as long as you're careful about what you're showing prior. There still has to be a reason for a payoff to be there, even if you don't get to see every single minute detail happening between, you know, point A and B. There has to be a reason that point B exists, and that was the explosion there. So just one of those like little cheaty things that people can do and get away with if done properly. All right, so on this sequence, I wanted to see if I couldn't figure out how she was swinging through here. I can see clearly that there is something in her hand. There's like something attached, and it has like a long extension off of it. But I think it might just be the compression gets rid of all that color because it's so small, almost entirely. Like there's nothing here at all. I went through that shit as carefully as I could. She's also showing up behind me here, but kind of same thing in this shot. There's nothing in her hand as she lands. Nothing like changes, detaches, has any sort of that payoff to it. So like you would see Spider-Man's web detach and just either still hang there, or you would see somebody with like a grappling hook like that would release and return. So again, I'm not sure if that's compression on YouTube side. It easily could be. Maybe there was something there in the original shot, but it could have also just been them going, who cares, you know, because at the end of the day, who's going to be staring at what's here, right? Like that small black line that appears there. Maybe they just didn't want to do it twice in this shot, so they saved it for that part and instead didn't use it for this one. For the record, this is also something else here too. This movement is probably the most like unrealistic out of the entire project. The jumping around here felt very floaty, and like they basically moved her to one pose and then just slid her around the screen in that pose. It didn't feel great. I'm not saying it's bad because again, you're dealing with a very complex world here. There's a lot of surfaces and things getting in the way. There's a lot to deal with when it comes to all of that when you're thinking about it and working on it on the animation. So I don't blame them for that one. It does feel a little bit too floaty compared to all the other work on this project so far being so very well weighted, all things considered, that this is the unfortunate part where they had to just kind of throw that to the side and be like, we can only do so much. Though I did really like how this shot felt, because she like comes down, just hits, lands, and then slices through this smoke and dust. I feel like a lot of teams might have just opted to not do this part because it seemed extraneous, like why would you need to see that? You're already going to see her coming out the next time. But adding that slice through there gives you that connection to how she's able to like make it through so quick. I mean, obviously it's dust, but there's a line of sight thing to be found here. So she's making a visual like connection for herself in that world. And that's something that people in an average animation scene might not have thought to add, because you're not in that scene as the animator, as the viewer. So why would it matter? But they thought of that here in order to make it feel a little bit more real. Let's have her slice that dust open so she can make that visual connection before moving. That's extremely intelligent. It just showcases more and more every single time they do something like that, how careful they're paying attention to every little detail and making sure that this world feels like it's something that's lived in. And right here, just a quick shockwave appreciation. I love that. Love some good shock waves that happen. Showing that sound moves before something would blast through rock is very true. Those tremors happening in the rock would reach the visual side of things. It would vibrate and scatter out before the force actually erupted out of the rock. It's the same thing that happens with a lot of volcano explosions, big ones at very least. And it's just that attention to detail of having that little bit of extra physics that makes the whole shot feel that much more real. It's so good. And there's even like a proper delay on it too. Like you hear the boom before the explosion fully releases out of there. You see it on the ground beforehand because sound would travel faster. And then there's the second one where, of course, much more force, camera shake happening to sell that extra energy, a lot more going on. But that pre-explosion shockwave is really what I wanted to appreciate. I thought that was just a brilliant addition to this shot. Real quick character animation thing. Loved the cockiness she had when she just kind of sets up like, you done, son? You gonna start talking about your final, like, dues or whatever? You shut the fuck up. Like, she just has such a disinterested look, and the way she just props herself up on her knee. There's not a single fuck is going into that thought at all. Just a, you done? Quick detail I loved about this too is this parallel between her seeing these like glistening lights and then her like matching that back to this in her past. I think that is such a cool parallel to draw. I also love the contrast between these two, having her past be very warm, these oranges and reds, this beautiful soft feeling in the lighting, and then her current life being a lot more cold, dark, you know, not nearly as softly lit. It's all harsh edges, nothing like really soft and smudgy like her past is perceived to be. And that's just, it's beautiful. I love seeing that connection made with those shimmers happening on this compared to the ones happening in her eyes, and then all of a sudden just kind of a realization that there's something happening. It's not, you know, like triggered PTSD is not what's happening right now. I have to pay attention. But I love that even through that, after she gets away from it initially, she still has this like focused but really nonchalant look to her, like it's not a real threat. Just because something's happening doesn't mean that she's in danger. She just needs to keep out of danger. So there's just this lack of urgency on her face and more of a focus on don't die, you know, do what you've always done, pay attention, eyes alive, you know. Like I really like that about her character, the fact that she doesn't really have many reactions to stuff. So when you get stuff like earlier in that fight sequence when she kind of had this like moment where she thought he had her and she like was almost to be stabbed by him, she was surprised in that one quick moment, but really not since. And that's really, really telling of her character. All those things speak so loud about who she is without having to say it. I think that's what's really good about the Arknights animations with their visual storytelling is how clean and understood that is. There's no other like question about it. The characters know their motivations. They don't feel confused unless that is a motivation. And that's just so nice. Again, we have these parallels of the character here, the flashbacks happening between shots here. I do just like want to click through here just so you can see some of these choices being made. I love that they're really focusing on little details like having her toes and legs kind of skirt on the edge of the rocks. You get to see her kind of like react to that jagged flooring a little bit by having her like knees buckle a little bit when they get caught on the rock. And then matching it to stuff like this, that first time through, I thought this is just like her hiding, like she actually was worried, until I realized what they were doing with the whole contrast and that this was something in the past and this is more of like her younger, more inexperienced, and then connecting it all between this and her past here with the door. Another quick character thing here, loved how this happened, how she looks up, immediately starts jotting her eyes around just to gather little pieces of information in order to make the whole picture a reality and understand what's going down right now. it's like, I barely know this character. That is so her. You know, like, that's what this project has done. It's given me a lot more of an understanding about this character's motivations, how they act, and all done without really much dialogue or explanation. You get to see it all, and seeing is so much better. Show, don't tell is a classic statement in all film and all visual medium, and this does that so well. Even though I don't play the game or really know many of the other characters, I'm understanding the relationship she has with a lot of these characters and how they relate to the situation now. Also, the lighting on this shot, beautiful. I know I've talked about that earlier too. I just love, again, we're on this, like, there's no real softness to this. There's that soft light around the edge, but that's just a quick cascade. All of the other harsh shadows in here are just taking over. That's really the visual point on this shot, is how crisp those shadows are and how deliciously oversaturated that light is. That is so bright. Like, the brighter the light, the less soft the shadow. So there's this huge aggressive light source just barreling down straight into this shot and making everything so very cinematic and intense. I love the way it looks, and I just love when they do this. And of course, I mentioned this one when I was watching, and just how the shadows react to each other. Still got that harsh light of that shadow passing by as those pillars are passing as it falls. It's just so good. I love how clean these shadows are. It's a beautiful, beautiful sequence there. Some absolute love went into all of that. And of course, here we are. Beautiful, beautiful impact frames. I love this one because not only does it show the giant ring of shockwave around the outside and just cementing that impact in there, but it also shows you just a little bit of the separation happening from the center of that, you know, mass. It's just boom, and then it converges to that one spot here, and then you get to see not the result of it immediately. Like, usually impact frames will go back to the original shot and just show it exploding more, whereas this one just fades straight into two completely different angles and more illustrated versions of what happened. Rather than showing it explode more, they just showed the aftermath. It was literally such an impactful explosion that you didn't need to see any other detail there. You didn't need to watch it happen. Instead, you get to see this beautiful, like, circus of contrast here between the oranges and the blues, yet again, pulling that contrast into the story and making it a very, very poignant chunk of this project. I love this sequence, this shot. I love a lot of them in this, but this one is like, that's hanging up on a wall levels of artistry. That is such a beautiful shot. This really shows that there's beauty in destruction, and that might be even a thing that the character believes in. Maybe she finds some sort of a positive to what she does and the powers that she has, aside from just being a mercenary. Maybe she does have a form of respect for what she's able to do beyond that. You know, it's like there's a lot of character things that are answered in this project, like I had mentioned earlier. So this is more and more of that, and I think it just does so damn well at it. Another thing I like about this whole contrast dealio is right here, this whole, like, Northern Lights, Aurora Borealis situation happening up top is kind of blending the cold and the warm hues in this shot, and it kind of acts as a payoff to both her character arc throughout this project, as well as a payoff to what just happened in that battle. So it's a really, really, really nice way to tie that together. A beautiful visual spectacle there. It just looks so pretty. And then being able to connect it to the story in that way and showing that maybe those past and present thoughts are starting to converge into an understanding more about herself is a really beautiful sentiment to have. And unfortunately, I do not know the character well enough to understand if this little smirk she does here is because she knows she's gonna have to kill a child and is happy about it, or the exact opposite. But this is the cheekiest little grin I've seen in any project in a long while. Look at that smirk. That is like Snake waifu Hoyak. Like, that's some edge. on that smile. That's got a little, it literally has an edge. It literally has like a dimple. Like, she is so happy. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Rip child. And here I really didn't want to talk about much, but I did want to see this animation happen just a little slower. I love the free-floating, like, mechanical chunks here all coming apart. It just looks beautiful. There's not really much to break down about it, just the segments being connected well and everything just kind of going to the place it needs to be. I think that's really nice and smooth. I love that they decided to bring in Amiya to pull the story together for one final shot here, and especially since she's in that new outfit, again, assuming that that means that she has entered a different class or kind of prestiged in a way. It's a beautiful shot, and I think that this whole thing is also very much worth being like a computer background or hanging it on a wall. It's just a beautiful... The illustrations in this are just as beautiful as some of the animation portions. The illustrators for this project are insanely talented, and I'm mad I'm not one of them. But I think that about does it for my breakdown here. For those who are curious, this video is over an hour and a half long in raw form, and I will not be releasing that because it's a lot of just me clicking around trying to think of what I want to say because I'm bad at words, but it goes to show you how much this project was going to be of an undertaking, and I knew that, which is why I was initially like, should I do this at all? I don't know if I have that much time to sit down all at once, but here we are. So thank you all so very much for watching. Thank you, Bylov, despite everything I've said, for throwing up this and boosting your Patreon roll in order to make it happen. This was really fun to watch and break down and figure out all these things about this character that I didn't know before, and now I kind of have a rough idea of. Although I know at least 50 of you who are watching this are probably going to go down to the comments section and give me a gigantic wiki-style lore dump that I will inevitably read because I have nothing else better to do. I always respect reading those. They're so much fun to see how people break things down and help me understand more about the world as well. Like, I'm not completely against learning about the lore of Arknights. I just don't play the game. So it's a matter of, like, it doesn't get handed to me. And I do know that there are websites that allow me to experience all of that story. But also, I ain't reading all that. So it's kind of hits this moment of, I like visual mediums. I prefer to experience the visual aspect of something and not just reading them. I'm not much of a book reader, so I'm not much of a visual novel person either. It's all the same to me at the end of the day. But when you guys make comments where you like break stuff down into just a couple paragraphs, I read those because that's a lot more palatable to me than just like a huge wall of text. But I digress, so thank you all so very much for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more animation breakdown stuff, I do have a few more that are probably going to be coming within this next month. And otherwise, if you just liked this video and you want to follow and support me for more, you know how to do all that, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!